Hi, if you or your children are suffering because of your relationship with your ex-partner, because it's stressed or strained, or maybe they're just not a nice person, this show is for you. Welcome to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brook Olson and Charlie Jewett. Enjoy another episode now.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome to episode 24 with Brook Olson and Charlie Jewett, the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is titled Attorneys, What They Do, What They Don't Do, and How to Prepare and Choose One. And Brook, I'm going to try to stay calm, but this is near and dear to my heart.
Well, every once in a while when I'm putting these together, Charlie, I'm thinking about you. So
I'll stay professional.
Okay. Good. So let's kick this off. I think, attorneys are the stepping stone into a lot of this. And, when we're going to choose one, when we're not going to choose one, how we make the decisions are crucial. And, I was thinking about this morning as we were getting ready to do this podcast. And, I think about this in terms of any profession, whether it's an attorney, a doctor, whatever. And I really believe that there's this bell curve, and you're stepping into a place of high conflict. You don't want to go with the cheapest attorney you can find. It's a really bad idea. There's a ton of mediocre, okay attorneys that can get things done when they're just doing paperwork and there's not a lot of conflict. But when we move into the high conflict arena, we have to get to the elite stage. We've got to find attorneys that are really on the ball and really know what in the heck that they do. And this is a very, very small group.
Right.
And then once we even get into the group, we've got to really start to peel through what is going to match us and understanding what these attorneys are going to do for us. And basically, these are people that are going to prepare pleadings and put our documents together and submit them to the court. They're going to plead our case. They're going to be our advocate. And most of them have like a series of steps in a particular way of thinking. And I think this is the place where our listeners, if they're just getting started or they're looking for a new attorney or whatever stage that they're in, they have to really come into grips with what's happening. And picking the right attorney is not just about their knowledge base. It's about how they communicate with you, how their office communicates with you, how that attorney is going to listen to what you have to tell them, and to make sure that at every step along the way that communication is moving forward and that you guys are on the same page. So there's nothing more frustrating, as I know you know this particularly, Charlie, that you walk into a courtroom, you've spent all this money to get prepared, and your attorney starts to talk and they're off message. They seem like sometimes they aren't even talking about the same case, that they get off track and things go sideways.
Right.
So these are the pieces that, when we're looking at our attorneys, the early indications of this can be there, and we want to make sure that we're on the right track with them, and that if we're not, if there is some indication here that things are not going right, to be okay with pulling out, changing directions. So, this is what attorneys are doing. This is what they don't do. This is where attorneys are not in a place of oftentimes the expectation that the people that are hiring them have. They don't know who you are. They don't know your history. They don't know what you want. And they don't know anything about the other parent.
Right.
So how you come in to give them that information becomes really important, because, again, these guys are pleading your case. They're putting the case law together. They're going up in front of judges and they're arguing for what it is. But we want them to know. We want them to know who we are. And we want to have them have some sense of the bigger picture of what's going on. And it's only when they have that and they're willing to get a little bit deeper into the weeds with you that they can really help you with the directions that you want to go. Most of these attorneys are not equipped to navigate the emotional waters that you're in. You know, these guys are law-based, they're in their heads, they're looking for angles, but they're not connected with the emotional pieces. And if you are looking to your attorney to take care of your emotional needs, to hang with you, to walk with you and hold your hand through this, you're making a mistake, because you're going to be, they'll listen, they'll try. Many of them, you know, have some level of ability here, but you're paying them at $350, $400, $500 an hour to do that. So this is a place where you really want to have somebody else that can help you navigate these waters, a coach, a therapist, somebody that understands the court system that can help you along the way here. The attorney is not the person that you want to do.
And that's I didn't know that when I got started. I mean, I'm glad that people who are listening to the show can hear that if they're just getting going, because when I got started, well, one, my ex-wife and I had planned to have no attorneys and just a peaceful divorce, right? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was the exact opposite of peace. Let's just say it that way, right? So I got served with papers, and there were some pretty shocking things. So I had to get an attorney. I didn't have you in my life. I didn't know anything about like coaches or anything about the system, and I could see from my experience and just the way the world works that it's like, well, I don't know, you need a hamburger, go to like one of the hamburger places. You need an attorney, get an attorney. They all do the same thing, right? But this isn't the same thing. This is a whole different world in this high conflict, dealing with a narcissist or a borderline personality disorder person, whatever it is. Man, I mean, reality is reality. It's the way it needs to be. It's the way it should be. So I try to make peace with the way things have gone. But gosh, Brooke, if I could go back and have known you ahead of time, right, and said, "Uh-oh, things went awry. Now I have to find an attorney. What's the best way to do that? How do I interview these guys? How do I make sure they really know what?" Because you know this about me. I'm 2.5 years in, still not divorced.
Yep.
And I mean, 2.5 years, and I still am waiting to share my peace. Like, I've been to family court services twice. I've been to court, 8 or 9 times, and I still am waiting to be able to share my side of this thing. I'm like, when's that happen, right? And that seems to be a mismatch in the 2 attorneys I've had, knowing what it is I want. And you've seen my kind of history. There's times where I write, and like I answer a lot of the stuff, and then the attorneys are like, well, don't say all that because it sounds like you're just a whiny baby. I'm like, well, how do I say my stuff? When do I actually get to communicate my side of this thing?
Right, and the truth of the matter is you may not get to communicate your side of this piece. You may just need to find, the exit door and walk through that exit door.
That's what it feels like.
But you need to be able to process the emotions that are going along with this, right? I mean, because process, this stuff is going to boil up and it's going to spill out into places that are really not appropriate, with your partner, with your friends, with your kids, and we don't want that to have a place to take hold. So, and again, we're talking about these attorneys, and as much as they are studying this more and they're getting a little bit more to speed with it, they do not understand the psychological profiles and the makeup of high conflict personalities. They don't get it. It's like, yeah, this is an angry person. They're screwed up. They can't do this, but they can't wrap their heads around the basics of what's going on developmentally with these people.
Mm-hmm.
And what will happen with so many of these attorneys is they'll become a negative advocate for you or a negative advocate for somebody with a high conflict personality, and they'll take up arms and they'll become emotionally involved in this process with you, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So, these people will get sucked into the high conflict personality, and they'll start to do battle with them, or they'll get sucked into doing battle with this person's attorney who has a high conflict personality of sorts, and they're doing battle over here. So we've got to be able, when we're looking at our attorneys, to assess their ability to join with us, to connect with us, to understand what we're doing, but also their ability to disconnect from the other components that are here and look at this and work from a standpoint of really being an observer of it and an
Right.
understander of it. Because, you know, when we walk into court, when we start to do this, we've got so many different personalities at work. And if that attorney is off for any reason, if they're having personal problems, if there's something happening at home, or there's been somebody in their family that's been injured, or whatever it is, and we don't know that that's going on in the background, and they start to lose a grip on what's happening, they're losing a grip on our stuff, and our life goes. So we really want to have a really good, solid relationship with that person. Not that we are getting enmeshed or getting into the personal stuff with them, but that we can know that when we're in that conversation with them, that they're with us, right?
Yeah, and then how do you protect yourself, or what recommendations would you give for the listeners to protect themselves ahead of time? Maybe it's not possible, but there's this weird reality. You know, my girlfriend's mother divorced her husband after 45 years, and basically the attorneys had them fighting until they ran out of money, and then as soon as they had no more money, they're like, all right, let's settle, right?
Right.
How do you see ahead of time or sniff that out if the attorney's just the type of person that just wants to drain you guys of your accounts,
Right.
and then they're going to be like, then we're done. You know what I mean?
Right. And this happens. And
Yeah, it's not I mean, it's terrible to talk about, but it's like a
not
reality.
that attorneys aren't necessarily good attorneys. I mean, they're good lawyers. They can fight the law. They can mix it up, but this isn't what we're looking for. So this takes us back to the beginning of the conversation of knowing what you want. You know, we had a whole podcast on that subject.
Yeah.
And this is the starting point when you walk into your attorney's office. So many people go to the attorney first. They walk into the attorney's office, say, I want a divorce. This is what's going on. Help me. And they haven't been able to pull apart any aspect of what they are really in or what it is that they're asking this attorney to do. And again, these attorneys, you know, they're not mind readers. They've got, so many of them have a step by step. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. This looks like this. We're going to put it in this pigeonhole. And they don't see the big picture of what's really taking place.
Right.
The first thing that our listeners should be doing, the first thing that they should be doing, is getting with somebody, a coach like myself, or somebody that can come in and help them see the big picture. You know, if they've been in an abusive relationship, what the pieces are, where the contact points are, how to disengage from that, how to get themselves stable around it, and then to look at the big picture of what they want and what is available for them in that. So this is, I want to have full custody, and I want you to fight for full custody. And to have this idea that what you're asking for is a high bar, and the likelihood of you getting that is not really good. So let's feather back and look at what we can do, what is reasonable, what we can shoot for that isn't going to drain you dry, and then to set up the background so the kids are safe and you've got the structure that you need in this. So in other words, solve the problem out front, create solutions that a family court mediator or a judge can look at and go, okay, given the things that I've got, I can do this. It doesn't seem out of the reach of reasonable decision making for them.
Yeah.
So what that requires, Charlie, is to have somebody that you're working with that has the ability to think out of the box. You know, so often an attorney will send a client to me, and I'll be getting them ready for family court services. I'll be doing some client management for them, and I'll be listening to what they are talking about and what they're trying to accomplish. And they're telling me stories, and I'll just listen to the story, and I'll pluck out of the story stuff that nobody hears. And I'll go, wait, this is an important piece to bring forward. Let's bring that piece forward. Let's back it up with this information, and let's make this a part of the conversation, because this is going to push this conversation further than anything else that you've told me so far. And it's usually something that an attorney oftentimes has missed.
Yeah.
And it's critical. And
Right.
these attorneys will miss many of these critical points because they are going, okay, this is this, we do this, we do this, we do this, and they'll read through, but they've got so much of this stuff going on that they don't see some of the through lines.
Right. You know what it's reminding me of? It's reminding me, I have on my Renovating Retirement podcast, I talk about this girl, Kelly, and I say, I hate buying cars. The whole car buying process is annoying, but there's really not a lot of good ways to get around dealing with the salesperson, right? So last time I bought a car, I had a friend named Kelly who worked in the car industry for 12 years, and she, called and pre-negotiated the whole thing, found which dealership to go to, the price, what I was going to get for my trade-in. I went there, and they still tried to pull the shenanigans, because you know how they do, like, let me talk to my manager, and you have to talk to like 4 different people while you're there, right? And they tried to pull some stuff, and I stuck her on the phone. She didn't happen to be in town, or else she would have come in person, but I put her on the phone. She set them straight. So basically I had a person that knew. I had to deal with these salespeople, right? No way around that. But I had an expert helping me hold them accountable and navigate it. What it sounded like to me is that you're Kelly in this industry, or you're one example of that, where, like, yes, you have to deal with attorneys, but without somebody holding them accountable or coaching you, honestly, whether on purpose or not, they might just pillage you and like run all your assets out, right? Not listen, or stay in the fight until you're broke, but you can help.
Or dig you into a hole for your parenting time that is very difficult to get out of, which again drains your assets and everything.
I feel like that a little bit, right? I mean, I feel like I missed the opportunity to get 50-50 when there was no reason not to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why not? Like, I'm just a dude with nothing wrong that's ever happened. Why wouldn't I be 50-50, right?
Right. So you're talking about, how do you keep from making these mistakes and hiring the wrong attorney and whatnot. So when you're sitting down, and if you've done all your homework, if you've done what we've talked about, if you've gotten with a coach and you've got your ideas together, and you sit down with your attorney and you go, okay, this is what I want. And they start to argue with you. And they start to tell you that that's not reasonable. And they start to try to push you into their mold.
Mm-hmm.
That's a red flag.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, hold it. I know this is what your thoughts are, but I've done my homework here. I know what it is, at least to a great degree, of what I'm looking to do. I've planned this out. I've worked with a professional to put this stuff together. I know what my pain thresholds are here, and this is the direction I want to go. And if they're saying absolutely not, you look at them and go, okay, this isn't a fit. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And not be willing to have somebody circumvent that piece, especially if you've done the work. I mean, when you're working with somebody like me, when you're working with a coach, this isn't an hour piece that you're just throwing stuff together. You're coming in and you're pre-bidding what it is that you want to take forward. And you're really taking the attorney's job and streamlining it for them. Because if you're working with somebody like me, we're going to look at where the other person is. We're going to look at some of the stuff that they're going to be looking at for discovering anyway. We're going to be pulling up text messages and emails, and I'm going to give you a whole bunch of things to do. So when you do pull that trigger, when you do step into the game, that your guns are fully loaded and you're ready to go. And when you've got somebody saying, no, this isn't that, then you go find somebody else. But the idea here is, I think you don't ever, ever, ever just want to talk to one attorney. You want to talk to 3. You want to go out and spend $150 that you're willing just to throw away on an initial consult, because that is going to be the precursor to give you the information that you need to move forward. And if you're just going to one person because your buddy Bob said they did a really good job for him, you don't know what Bob's circumstances were. You don't know how everything went down in the background. He just gave you a name and said, this guy did a great job for me. And that person may have a history of their own that is counter to yours, that is going to make things more difficult. So you have to sit down and have that conversation with them to really hear that they can listen, that they don't have biases that are going to collude with you, that you can just really start to get the ball rolling in the right direction from the get-go. And there is another thing that just came to my mind while I was saying that, is you don't want an attorney that is just going to collude with you, that are going to say, yes, this is right, and we're going to fight for all of this because you've been wronged. And that's a trap.
Yeah.
We're calling in what I call a negative advocate, that are going to fight for me no matter what, and they're not going to hold me accountable. Because if I've colluded with them or they've colluded with me, I'm just going to sit there and shell out. I remember working with my attorney on my first divorce, and I started getting these bills for conversations that I had with him. And I would go in for a consultation, or I'd be on the phone with him, and he'd spend a half an hour talking about golf or about something about his family or whatnot. And I'd get my bill and I go, wait a minute, we spent 10 minutes on my stuff and you are charging me for an hour and a half? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
This isn't how we do business.
Yeah.
I went back and, I had him cut that bill, and I said, we won't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Got it straightened out. But, those are examples of places where you can get lost in having the wrong attorney, or having them lead you down the primrose path that you really don't want to go down.
Well, here's what's interesting to me, especially I'm a financial advisor, right? Is at a cost of $350 to $500 an hour, any inefficiency is expensive, right? And
Right.
From my situation, having fired 2 attorneys now and being on my 3rd, it's an expensive mistake to pick the wrong person or someone you don't jive with or whatever.
Right.
So this is one of those areas where it seems like paying up front is actually worth it. You're not $500 an hour, right?
No, I'm nowhere near that.
Okay. So if for less than $500 an hour or $350 an hour, someone can save themselves those hours, right? Like it would have saved me, honestly, possibly into the tens of thousands at this point if I had you in the beginning.
Right.
But the paying for initial consultations up front, like you said, pay somebody $100, $150 or whatever to interview them. You may have to do that 3 times. Paying for your services to help know what they're looking for and what to walk in with, right? Because really, I talk about this in the financial services industry. You should know what you want before you talk to a financial advisor. Like, the advisor shouldn't be telling you, hey, if you or your spouse dies, do you want the other person to still have income or not? That's not their job. That's your job to know to design those blueprints, right? If you help somebody design kind of the blueprints of what they want from an attorney and go, hand it, stick it in front of their nose and go, can you do this, right? And they interview 3 people, that's going to save them, I would estimate, multiple hours at $350 or $500 an hour, right?
Absolutely. It's really an austerity plan. You've got so much of the work done, and a good attorney is going to look at you and go, wow, I want this person for a client because they're not going to be a pain. They know what to do. They're preloaded here. They can take direction, and we're ready to go.
Yeah, be easy money, right? Like line it up where the attorney is like, I love that. Like, that's straightforward. There's no work to do. I just go show up and talk, right?
Right. Yeah, and I don't want an attorney telling me what the courts are going to do and they're not going to do. I want somebody else to sit down and have a large conversation and not just say, this is how the courts generally see this, but when we start to get into the weeds a little bit, that these are the places that you're going to have landmines, and these are the places that you need to really pay attention to, and these are the places where we can really streamline that conversation. And to do that at a fraction of what the cost of that $350, $400, $500 team is then, you've eliminated that conversation. That 1 or 2 hour conversation becomes a 10-minute conversation, and the attorney can look at it and go, okay, this person really gets it, and they're ready to go, right?
Right. Yep. And I think, tell me if you agree with this. I think there's also some advantage that you have in seeing what multiple hundreds of attorneys have been able to accomplish. If you just get your advice from one attorney, and they say, oh, well, you probably can't win this thing, right? This X thing. Honestly, what they're saying is, I've never been able to win that one, right? When attorneys, I had a guy come in and watch me do my seminars, my financial planning seminars. He came in for 2 nights, watched me teach, and then he did a survey for the crowd, 60 people a night, did a survey and got their feedback. And he does this for about 200 to 250 financial advisors a year, all different personalities, right? Mm-hmm. And Brooke, it was amazing because I'm only me, right? I just know how to be me and talk or whatever. And he basically brought a perspective that it's not possible for me to have, looking at 250 offices a year for the last X amount of years. Here's what we're seeing. Nobody does a seminar that long. Let's shorten it. Let's just make it 3 points. Let's do, he gave me some tips. And when I implemented them as expected, just instantly, we had better results, right? But I couldn't get that from hiring one other speaker and saying, well, what do you think, right? Because his perspective was across hundreds of speakers. What I'm hearing, and we didn't prepare for this, it's not a sales pitch, it's just my ideas. What I'm hearing is that any attorney somebody hires is still only going to be one person, but you've seen hundreds of these, right? And may be able to bring a different perspective that can't come from an attorney.
Exactly. And that different perspective comes from having worked with many and being able to distill some of those successes into new ways of movement. Again, what we're trying to do, and I think what's critical in this is to have somebody on your team, and this is very much a team movement. It's not just one person, but to have somebody on your team that's capable of thinking out of the box and is willing to pull you out of the box with them. What if we do this? And that is somebody that maybe can go to the attorney and give them a different perspective that they can start to think out of the box. And I know that I've done that with many attorneys, that they'll come back to me and say, man, I never thought about that. That's a great idea. Let's go.
Let me stop you there. Because I've never even thought of this. As long as I've known you and you and I are friends and all that, right? I've never even thought of this, but hiring you, right, the attorney is the representative between the person and the court and the legal system, and you're talking about being a representative between the person and their attorneys, right?
Right.
I've never thought of that before, that you'd actually get on the phone with an attorney or show up in person or whatever, right, Skype, whatever, and help someone's attorney know how to best represent them in court.
I do that all the time.
Wow. That's awesome. Because, I think a good attorney wants to be good at their job and wants the client to be happy, right? Because we're talking about how to find the cream of the crop, not the crappy ones, right? So you're talking about how to find an attorney who's not only good professionally, their professional competence and their character, right? So if the person is that way, they're going to welcome the help, right? And they're going to kind of have the attitude well, I'm great at the law, not at understanding personality disorders, right? And so you come in the mix as an expert witness, so to speak, just on this 3-way call or whatever with your client and the attorney, and help the attorney know how to position it or frame it for the judge, right?
Right, or to really be able to understand at a greater level what the client is trying to accomplish, and possibly with a different way to go about it.
And that's got to save billable hours, because the attorney would just be fumbling around either doing the wrong things or
Right.
trying to find the right things.
Right. It saves billable hours and a great deal of redo when things go awry. So if we've looked at a landmine and I've pulled something out of somebody's dialogue that is going to be problematic, or they've told me something that the attorney may have said that just doesn't ring right with me, I can get on the phone if I've got a relationship with this attorney and the client has dictated that, this is how we're going to do business. And I can say, hey, this is something that I've seen that you might not have. And this might be a place that we want to make an adjustment or do things a little bit differently, or where you're not joining with this client and you're missing them.
Mm-hmm.
And where, we can do better as a team to move this ball forward. It saves everybody headaches.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So in some sense, we're evangelists. I didn't know it until now, but for a concept of, you don't just need an attorney. You need an attorney and a coach.
You need a team.
Yeah, you need a team.
If you're just going at this with your attorney, you're at least one member short of that team. I think that everybody that's going through this, that's in some level of high conflict, they need a coach. They need somebody holding their hand, helping them through that piece. And if that coach is able to play therapist with them simultaneously, that's great. But if not, they need somebody that's helping them that understands the court system, not just any old therapist, that understands the court system and understands high conflict personalities, that can help them process the things that they're going through, because disconnecting from a highly dysfunctional relationship, they're going through the grief process, they've got all of these things going on simultaneously that's going to pull their attention and help them make bad decisions. And they need to have that all going on at once. And the problem with this is we're breaking up and we're looking at spending a lot of money. And I'll hear people say this all the time: I can't afford that. I can't afford that extra person. I can't afford this other component to this. And the truth of the matter is that at the end of the day, I mean, we may be paying a little bit of this up front, but at the end of the day, they're not paying it out the back. So, that $200 hour to work with the coach is not a $500 hour that they're working with their attorney, or the $350. I don't know too many attorneys that are charging less than $350. So that's at least $150 savings right there. And, that becomes a 2-to-1 deal very, very quickly.
Well, I mean, I'd be candid because I'm in this right now, and you're not, right? You're not in the middle of a divorce. I have an $18,000 bill that I negotiated down to $12,000, and I feel like most of the work was total crap, right? Right. And you're aware of that, and the $12,000 doesn't make me happy, but how much of that $12,000 could have been saved, right? By knowing what I wanted ahead of time and, all that kind of stuff. What it sounded like to me is you've said that 70% of the divorces kind of sail through, they go kind of smoothly, and just having an attorney is probably fine. If nobody's fighting about anything, you just need the law. Like, what am I supposed to pay in child support, right? It's just plug in the numbers and do the thing. The 30% that are high conflict, and we've talked about, those aren't even legal matters. That's like stuff the court doesn't even know what to do with. That's emotional and mental illnesses, basically, right?
Right.
But if you're in the 30% category of a high conflict divorce, your team needs to be at least 3 people, because an attorney is not an expert in bipolar and narcissistic disorder or whatever, right? So you need at least the attorney, yourself, and then a coach like you to help the attorney understand what we're actually dealing with on the other side.
Right.
And that's an easy way to say it, right? If you're in the 30%, you need 3 people. If you're in the 70%, you need 2. You just need an attorney.
Just need an attorney to get through it. But just to cycle back to an earlier podcast, the predictors in this are the marriage or the relationship. As with the marriage, so goes the divorce.
Yeah.
So, we're tying these things back and forth, but that's a really big predictor.
So that basically, like, should you hire Brooke Olson? Well, was your ex a peaceful, loving, wonderful person? And you guys looked at each other and said, I'd like to not be married to you anymore. And they said, okay, let's do that. And everything went perfectly, right? Or were they a psycho, right? Freaking out, fighting, cheating on you, drinking, abusive, like lying, right?
Right.
And during the marriage, like, yeah, you need Brooke Olson and then help you find an attorney or like hold the attorney accountable.
You know the direction it's going to go, and don't even blink. Just get that third person, whether it's me or somebody else that understands this stuff, that is really going to help walk you through that stuff. Right?
See, that I think is easy for the listeners. Like if your ex is a nut job, you need Brooke. Right? Like if your ex is Mother Teresa and you guys just parted ways, listen to the show, it's fun, you love us, we're good guys. But if your ex is a nut job or a psychopath or has mental illnesses or is a liar or manipulating or conniving or not obeying court orders, if there's high conflict, the name of the show, right?
Right.
You need a high conflict navigator.
Right. Because
attorneys don't do that. There's nothing in their schooling that has to do with this.
Even if they have trained to be a mediator, they still miss so much of this stuff. And I want to come back and just kind of make a little correction in what you just said. I think that anybody that is contemplating a divorce needs to get the lay of the land, even if it's for an hour or a 2-hour consult, to just kind of go, okay, this is all right. This is not going to be hard. This is going to lay down easy. I can do this, and still have somebody that can help direct them through those initial components to streamline their first conversation with an attorney. Again, the first conversation that you have going in should not be with a friend, and it should not be with an attorney. The first conversation that you should have is going to be with somebody that's a coach that understands the direction, that can say, okay, these are the things that I think might work for you. Go on. Here's a few names of people that I think you might want to work with. Try it out. And then when you go to sit with your attorney, you're prepared.
Yeah.
But now, we've got to look at how to choose the right one. If we walk in and we sit down and we're working with this attorney to figure out whether they're a fit, you want to question, are they listening to me or are they dictating to me?
Right.
That's a red flag. If they're just telling you stuff and they're not listening to you, that's a non-starter. Are they creating fear, or are they offering a path with solutions? Right? We want solutions here. We don't want somebody jacking us up and going fear. I mean, there may be a piece that we got to pay attention to. This is something that is going to be problematic, but here's the problem, here's the solution, not just here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got to trust your gut. How well they come, no matter how well they come recommended. So I'm sitting with this person and this feels really right. This feels really good. They're listening, they're connecting, they're showing me solutions. This feels good. I can go here. Or, this person came really super high recommended and this just doesn't feel right. Listen to this doesn't feel right and walk out the door.
Yeah.
Not all good attorneys are the right fit for everybody.
Right. So they're not there trying to determine whether they're good. They're there to determine whether this is what should happen for you. Is this the best fit for you? Right. Nice. What a crazy world this is. It's like a season, right? Like this too shall pass, but for a lot of us, it's a season of 2 or 3 years, which is insane.
Right. And if we're going to be in a high conflict divorce or custody piece, my first divorce was 2.5 years, Charlie. And Jeez. I didn't go through nearly the stuff that you've gone through for a couple of reasons. One, I had a little bit of this that was being given to me at the time. I was working with a good therapist that was helping me just understand where my traps were so I could begin, to disengage from it. And my daughter was older. She was 16. She was just getting ready to get out of high school. I mean, we didn't have this long end piece out the back end, but it still took 2.5 years to get through the financials and everything else. And that seems ridiculous, but in this arena, it's kind of normal. So if you understand all of the things that we've talked about today, all of the things that we've been talking about week after week in the podcast, you can sit down and relax into, oh, this is just what's going to take place. It'll be done with it when it's done. And I haven't had to spend all of this money to keep in this stuff with an attorney that didn't understand what I was trying to navigate here. And I'm coming out the other end going, okay, I spent the time, but I didn't lose my life to it. I continued with my work. I continued with my life. I got into a new relationship. I functioned through all of these things, and I'm still alive and well, and I'm not beat to peanut butter.
Yeah. Yep. Oh my goodness.
So here's the question.
Beat to peanut butter. That's how many of us feel.
Yeah. So here's kind of that end question for everybody is, for many people, yourself included, what do you do if you've chosen the wrong attorney? Do you keep throwing good money after bad? No, you got to be willing to change. You got to be willing to cut your losses and walk on to the next stage.
Yeah.
It's an important piece. And for so many people that are listening to this podcast, I know that all of you guys are not new. I've spoken with many of you. And you're deep in this, and you've been through one or two attorneys, and you're still battling with all of this stuff. And you're going to need to get your head around this conversation for the next one, or for even if you're working with somebody that you want to continue to work with, to come in and take the reins of this runaway stagecoach.
Mm-hmm.
Have the reins, bring these horses back in, collect them, and smooth the ride out, because without your direction, without your guidance, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
Awesome. Don't abdicate it, guys.
So I will second that. If you're with the wrong attorney, shut it down as fast as possible, right? Just I don't have any experience with this, but there are probably people that would do better even on their own than having the wrong attorney. But if you're not in the right fit, end the relationship and go start the interview process again, get Brooke involved, and get a good match. There's different seasons of the divorce too. Like, what are we negotiating? Like childhood, or like a parenting schedule, or the finances, or whatever. And sometimes one attorney is good for one of those and not the other one. Right. So I'm at a place where I'm like, I want an attorney that can settle this thing, get this thing closed, right? A mediator, a peacemaker, a closer, right? Yeah. Because that's the season. That's where the universe brought me. That's what I need right now, is this thing after 2.5 years to be done, right? And I'm not sure that either of the previous two could do that. So that's the message here. Well, let me recap the message as I understand it, Brooke. You have to have an attorney who's the right fit for you. Yes, it's a small group of people that understand this world, but none of them are going to understand this world of high conflict well enough to only use an attorney. So yes, use an attorney who's the best that you can find, but with your help, with Brooke's help. Have a 3-person team. You, your coach, Brooke, and then an attorney, so that Brooke can be communicating with the attorney. And I know it's nice, Brooke, for us to say, like, or someone like you, like someone else, but I don't know who else is like you, so I don't know what to say. Right? So have a 3-person team if you're in high conflict instead of a 2-person team. Don't just pick an attorney, but pick an attorney and a coach. And then if it's not working out, change. Switch it up, because these are your kids we're talking about. It's your relationship, your kids. The attorney has nothing to do with this, right? It's a professional you hire to accomplish something done the way you buy a shovel if you need to dig a hole, right?
Right.
The shovel snaps in half, you buy another shovel. It's just, I'm not down talking their personalities. In their own world, they're probably wonderful. But in this case, they have a function. And if they're not accomplishing that function, we need to let them go and find someone that's going to get the job done, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fair enough?
Thanks for coming in and doing this again this week, Charlie. I mean, we've got a hell of a roll going here, and I am just continually enjoying all of this. And, you know, by the results that we're seeing about people that are joining and downloading and following this podcast, we're reaching more and more people every week.
Well, that's what it feels like. It feels like good is being accomplished, that people need this information, that as they get in touch with you, they are being helped, right? So we're going to keep this thing rolling, guys. Tune in next week on Friday for another episode of the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brook Olson and Charlie Jewett. Get in touch. Email Brook. You'll hear the information at the end of this podcast. How to get in touch with Brook. Probably just look up his name. You can probably find him, Brook Olson, High Conflict. But get in touch. Get the help you need. And above all things, provide the most peaceful and loving environment you can for your kids as you navigate through this high conflict situation. You can be the sanest parent in their life. And as Brook has said, that is all they need. You can be everything that they need and be the answer. All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week.
Bye, Charlie.
Brooke, people don't have to wait until Friday mornings to get more content. If this is something that's helpful for them, right? This isn't the first time you've broadcast anything or recorded anything or put anything out there in the world. What are the other ways people can get the help more aggressively or speed up their recovery process? What materials are available for people right now?
Well, I've written a book called The Black Hole of High Conflict, and it's available on Amazon and Kindle.
Great.
And everything that we're talking about is really compressed and put into there. So this is a really good starter place to get in and get your mind working and to see what these concepts are about and how to start to apply them. The other place that I think that is valuable is to go to our website and look at some of the blog articles that I've written. Those are available there as well. They go into some of these other arenas, and that's at www.highconflict.net. So the book, the website are also really good places to get the material. And also we have classes. We have high conflict diversion program classes that you can get into and get some one-on-one help with this as well.
And you know me, I'm aggressive. Whatever I want to become good at or learn, I find someone who's good at it and pay them and hire them and shorten my learning curve. What if somebody just wants your help? Somebody says, Brook has this information. He's good at something I'm not good at yet, and I want to work with him. Do you have any type of coaching or consultations or anything like that?
Absolutely. I do one-on-one coaching for custody cases. I help people get ready for family court services. If you've got that in your community, I work with attorneys and clients to help them with managing and strategically setting them up to have more successful cases as well.
And how do they reach out? You want them to just go to the website or email or phone, or what's the best way for them to reach out, raise their hand, and say, I need some help?
They can email me. My direct email is brook at highconflict.net. That's BROOK at highconflict, HIGH, conflict.net.
Perfect. That's everything everybody would need to get some help, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brook.
Thank you, Charlie.